Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Albums That Made Me. So this is the second episode. If you've not seen the first one, check it out. It's about the album Clay Man by In Flames. So quite a big difference here genre-wise. So in this episode we're going to be talking about the album Dummy from Portishead. And I'm going to be just reflecting and musing on how this particular album shaped my musical taste and then helped make me the music omnivore that I am now. So we're going to explore various aspects of the band. I'm going to just reflect on the fly about my exposure to the band, how it sort of provided me with a sort of gateway into other bands in a similar style, and also bands that were around maybe at that time that weren't necessarily in exactly the same style but certainly had similarities in some way, or the sort of bands that maybe people that were into trip hop might also been listening to. I'm going to use a number of tools I've got here. And I think, as I said before, I'm going to release the code for those at the end of the series. And I'll put that up on my GitHub page in case you're interested in using similar tools yourself. So yeah, let's dive in. And as I'm going through, I just talk a little bit about how I got into the band, how that also. So this is a really interesting band because ultimately they fired off a number of changes. I don't know if it's just the right word, but just they, for various points in my life, they by sort of going back and contacting the band, so to speak, I don't mean in person, but just reacquainting myself with their work at certain points in time. It then, made me widen out a little bit more in that area. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. So let's wind back to when this album came out, like 94. And I was aware of the band, I think, initially, not only through some of these tracks, friends were playing them, but also certain tracks would be used as background music on things I was listening to. So it was sort of there in the background. Now I had, before I became aware of this band, I'd already bought Massive Attack's Blue Lines. And that's a really interesting an album, in as much as a lot of people may become aware of Massive Attack through, was it Unfinished Sympathy? But what I find is you really, as you go into the deeper tracks on Blue Lines, then you start to really sort of tap into, what trip hop is all about. Because I don't think you always get it from that Unfinished Sympathy. And interesting as well, the amount of different individuals that are involved in this Blue Lines album. And also Tricky was on it as well. So, yeah, I'd already sort of got softened up a little bit. But then once I heard this album in pieces through the singles releases through the course of 94 and then friends playing it, my interest was piqued. The funny thing was, during this period, funds were a bit short for me, and also I was putting myself through Open University doing a postgrad. At the same time I was working a regular 9-to-5 job, and so a lot of my income, well, all my spare income, was going into financing that postgrad. And I remember just sort of putting off buying this album, because whenever I saw it, it was always seemed at full price. Like it was never reduced. And then eventually I did buy the cassette, and then later I bought the CD and so on. So I sort of got attracted to the sound initially, and then I started to listen to a few other bands, again re-listening to some of the Massive Attack stuff, also some of the stuff that Tricky had then developed after he'd, gone down his own sort of musical path. But also I'm trying to think, this would have been about late 90s. I was listening to some sort of drum and bass as well. So I think what happened was I started listening to this, and then because drum and bass was around at the same time in that area, I then started sort of getting and listening to that. So there were several artists that I was just casually listening to around that time with drum and bass. The other really interesting thing is whenever you sort of hear Portishead mentioned and the Bristol scene, Nana Cherry's name comes up. And interesting enough, I had already been checking her out as a result of her solo album, but I think didn't she contribute backing vocals to lead vocals to a Bomb the Bass track, maybe something like that. Anyway, so but her name comes up a lot in connection with that, or the scene then, and also stuff just prior to that. So because just prior to Trip Hop, there was a whole dance music scene in the UK around, I suppose, acid house and raves and stuff like that, like rave music. So that had been going on prior to this sort of trip hop stuff. I was also curious that a number of bands came about as a result of this enterprise allowance scheme in the UK. So that's pretty interesting. So that was my sort of first introduction. Then interesting things happened. So over time, I think it happened when I had the album cassette, I was listening to it and listening to other artists that were around, the Bristol scene, and then also other artists that would have put out slightly different genres of music, but in the same rough, what would you call it, like parent genres, sort of electronic dance music, I suppose. And then when I buy the CD, I get interested in sort of in filling a little bit with other artists and checking out maybe where it's gone. So let's just run this sort of artist generator on the band, and then I'm gonna that'll jog my memory sufficiently to take me down the rabbit hole. So by now, so I've only got 3 albums out, but what happened, from my understanding of things, and obviously we can you can read through the articles, but a lot of people in the band, I not so much went there, but they had a lot of projects that they were involved with. Like I know Jeff Barrow, and it'll come up later, has been involved with soundtracks as well. So Jeff Barrow, Adrian Utley, Beth Gibbons have all published later works in their own thing, alongside any subsequent thing they might have done with Portishead. And yeah, they're basically the core members of the band. So let's go and do that. I'm going to set the temperature to 0, so we should get the least amount of hallucinations. Okay, so Massive Attack, Tricky, Goldfrapp, Moracheba, Sneaker Pimps, Phonic Lamb, 07, York, Uncle, DJ Shadow. Okay, yeah, so good. So what then happened was sometime in the it'd be like the mid to late 90s. So I'd probably say about 90, hang on, no, sorry. Sometime in the mid 2000s. Mid 2000s. I sort of go back and reacquaint myself with the genre, and in doing that I discover this band, Lamb. Yeah, so Adrian Barlow's involved on that. So yeah, so Lamb, and then to a little degree sometime in the 2000s I stumbled across Uncle, and also probably more in the early 2000s DJ Shadow, and start buying specific CDs by those artists, but not particularly filling in the back catalogue that much. And then sometime in the mid 2000s and then into 2007, 2008, I go back to Portishead and rediscover, if you like, this. So if you haven't ever checked this out, Roseland NYC live, check it out. Particularly if you can track down the DVD with it on. There is a DVD recording. It's probably, there we go. Yeah, I've got this one. So that came out 2002. So, did I? Yeah, so I'm misremembering this. So what actually happened here was that I don't know if anybody can remember back to when Amazon used to do DVD rentals, certainly in the UK, and then it evolved into, what was it, Love Films, probably? I can't remember specifically. Anyway, I was getting a lot of video DVDs through that, watch them, send them back, get the next one. And I checked this out, and then I'm trying to remember if I ever did go out and buy a copy of this or not. It's interesting because it's not on the shelf now, so I don't know if it went missing or I gave it to somebody, or I just realised most of it had been put up onto YouTube. But yeah, this is definitely worth checking out. Really good, and it's got a full orchestra with the band as well. And so that was recorded in 98. So that would have been recorded. Where are we? So yeah, between this album and Third. So there'll be no Third material on it. Then, of course, in 2008, this album comes out. And at that point, we get in 2009, into 2010, I'd always started listening to, I was sort of an early adopter, if you like, of streaming services in the UK. So things like, really early versions of Spotify that were kicking around back when it was invite only, and services like Deezer as well. So, started checking out stuff through there. So that's really how I listened to this album. And then subsequently that one. And so, yeah, so it really, in the mid 2000s, opened me up to bands like Lamb. And the other one, again, it's interesting, the drum and bass thing, because also I remember checking out the band Olive, and also, funnily enough, Baby D. I went back, I got a Baby D cassette, and they're a bit more drum and bass. So yeah, so for me there is a bit of cross-pollination there. Now later on, it wasn't until a lot later I sort of started checking out Goldfrapp, Morochiba, obviously, Bjork, that sort of thing. Now if we go into the Last FM side of it, so we'll see what Last FM has to say for itself. Again, in a previous episode, I'd explained that it goes through Last FM, looks up the top albums, top tracks by the band in question, then goes through, looks up using their similar artists endpoint or feature, goes through, finds similar artists, which is always really interesting with this, and then the top album by similar artists, and then the top track, not off the album, but the top track by that artist, and it could be off any album. Now, I don't know how much people scrobble using Last FM anymore, so you get some very, very weird results sometimes based on older data. So yeah, I don't think I recognise anyway. Now it could be possibly because, and it's interesting, this is fine. It could be possible we're getting a bit of a glitch here, but this is why it's always interesting with these. I'll look at the playlist generator and see what comes up. So that worked really well. I'm using Gemini there. Yeah, here we go. So it's Massive Attack. So Martina Topley Bird sang on a number of tricky tracks, but I believe she sang on what's the big album? I can never say, is it Melancholic? Something like that. And it's on, yeah, there's a number of tracks that she contributes on in terms of Tricky's back catalogue. Yeah, best way to think about it. So that's a really interesting list. Let's try a bit of genre history on trip hop and then just see if anything I'm curious if there's any later genres. I'm just making sure I actually get this right. We'll also try changing the temperature on this. I'm going to go back into the other one and just change that to 1. Just see how inventive it brums back with different stuff. Okay. Massive Attack, Portishead, Tricky, DJ Shadow, Sneaker Pimps. Oh, of course, Bonobo, yeah. A bit more of a jazzy feel. I did listen to them sometime in the late 2000s, actually. So I certainly own the first 4 there. I'll definitely listen to that. I have some version of this, I think. And 07. Now that 07. Oh, I'm thinking of System 7. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting muddled up there because System 7 was a band, like a dance band, which had the guy from what's that? Yeah, his name escapes me. Now he's a guitarist, and he may have been in. Yeah, should probably come to me after I finish the video. So this is really cool. Yeah, the rise of rave culture. I went to a really interesting. We went to Well, yeah, because that's something that then happens. So another interesting tie-in here is sometime in the mid-2010s, when we were visiting the UK, I went to Bristol and Bath for about 3 days, and there's a really good exhibition there, the history of Bristol, and not surprisingly, it touches on trip hop. I do have a Lee Scratch Perry album, actually. I can't remember which one though. And yeah, Brian Eno, and of course Kraftwerk. And I don't know if quite. I think how I ended up sort of re-appreciating Kraftwerk is, from what I remember, is around the time I was listening to trip hop. I think I've done it on an episode of My Life in Objects. If I haven't, I'll do it in a later episode. I got a really cool book on ambient music, but it sets the net quite wide. And as a result of sort of reading that book, I then sort of go down an Eno and various other artists rabbit hole. It casts quite a wide net in there. And I think I end up listening to Lee Scratch Perry more as a result of looking through some like 70s albums that I was rather lacking in. And of course, I forget things like Herbie Hancock, who was more. I don't know if anybody ever remembers the track. What's that? I have to look it up now, because he did there's a really big dance track that was popular in the early 80s off the album Future Shock, which I owned, and that's it, Rocket. Yeah, instrumental hip hop. So yeah, that to me, I mean. Okay, introduce. Yeah, so I can see a lineage in instrumental hip hop into trip hop as well, and then a little bit more up to date. Again, all these interesting links is sometime in the 2010s. I know. Well, actually, no, it was more in the 2020s actually, because it was post COVID. I got really interested in the Dread remake, and let me just see if I can find the link here. So I think it's through. Where is it? I think it's more through Adrian Utley actually. I can find it here. Yeah, you can see he's got a lot of credits. Busy man now. Soundtrack music. Does it mention it here? Oh, sorry, got it wrong guy. Think. Jeff Barrow, that's it. Film work. Yep. Yes. Yeah, so Ex Machina. But what happened was I'd watched this several years ago, and then I was aware that Alex Garland had also done obviously 28 days later, but more importantly, Dread. So Dread was 2012, but for some reason I didn't. Yeah, because that's right, because I watched this on streaming services, and then what happened was I couldn't. I ended up actually buying a copy, and then got really interested in Alex Garland, having, as I said previously, seen Ex Machina, but also I didn't realise that he was actually the writer for Sunshine, which I had seen around the time that came out, 2007, 2008. It's a really good film if you've not watched it. Actually, I really enjoyed it. Directed by Danny Boyle. He's involved with a lot of Danny Boyle stuff. He also did the Devs mini-series and Annihilation. But I became just really interested in his work, in his interviews, and started watching various interviews. And then I stumbled across an interview that was done with Alex Garland and the... if we go back, so Ex Machina, I'm trying to think of the other person involved with Ex Machina. That's it, Ben Salisbury. So apparently what happened was, that how they got involved with this is they had previously worked on this, but the music wasn't used that they produced for whatever reason. Now you can hear it. There is a way to hear it. In fact, they released the soundtrack. See if I can find where it mentions about the music. Where are we? Does it mention it? See if we can actually see. Because my understanding is that they did start to roll, hadn't written music for this, but it wasn't used. They got a different composer in to do it. But the music has been released as a consequence, and I am trying to remember what they actually called it in there. Yeah. No, I don't know how much it's going to list them here. But there was a sit-down interview when they screened one of Alex Garland's movies in the UK. They did like what would you call it, like a premiere type thing, and I heard this interview on the radio with the two composers for the Ex Machina soundtrack. I'll include a link actually in the thing because it's really interesting listening to the interview. And then later in the interview, Alex Garland joins them. And but yeah, I wish I could find the name of the alternate soundtrack, because they did mention it, and you can find it on Spotify as well. I wonder if it's going to have it through Jeff Barlow's screen work. Does it mention? There's Ex Machina. No, it doesn't really reference it, does it? Because I think at the end of the thing, they really just got involved with, what was it, like sound? Oh, here we go, there you go. Released the album Drock. And I could be wrong here, but I got a feeling that it actually has some of the material that they were thinking of going to be using for that. Yeah, so you can see there's a lot of Yeah. Interesting side things going on here. Music supervisor. They did Annihilation and Devs and Men and Civil War. Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting sort of side rabbit hole to go down, because several of these sort of individuals that were involved with trip hop have now gone on to like soundtrack work as well. So, as you know, the case with a lot of musicians. Lamb, I was trying to remember with them. So yeah, trip hop, drum and bass, folktronica, and I'm trying to think which album I have by them. But they're well worth checking out, actually. I think this one, probably their debut. That got Goreki on it. Yeah. They did lots of really good videos as well. 96, so it took me quite a while to catch up with them, because it wasn't until the 2000s I really started to check them out. And another band I mentioned which didn't come up on the list there was Olive. Now they're more of a they're a bit more of a drum and bass band. I don't know if they're going to be here. Yeah, trip hop as well. Breakbeat, that was the term I was trying to think of. And with them, yeah, I ended up owning both of these albums, and again, I didn't buy them until 2000. So that was really, yeah, this is really good actually. These are really, also they can categorise them as trip hop. I suppose that album was a bit more breakbeat and drum and bass. I must remember, well, you can get it from the, actually, yeah, you can get through, can't you, from the Portishead article anyway. But this is a pretty, then we got things like Ilbient, so yeah, I go down a bit of a Ilbient rabbit hole as well. So that would have been probably care of more the soundscape side of things, which would be, it's not listed here, because I'm thinking of people like, not Dungeon Synth, although that was another rabbit hole I went down. Lustmord. Yeah. So, yeah, I ended up going down a bit of a, dark ambient rabbit hole as well. It's amazing where these sort of bands can send you over time. I'd already been down a breakbeat rabbit hole on numerous occasions. They're an interesting band to check out, actually. Uncle, is that track? Is it Rabbit in the Headlamp? Something like that, off of Science Fiction. Yeah, Rabbit in Your Headlights. It's pretty cool. And there's other bands later in their career that have introduced elements of trip hop into the sound. Interestingly enough, My Dying Bride have an album that's very trip hoppy, and they've also got a really cool cover of on the. So if I go back a stage, try and find Portishead. So they've got Wild Bunch. Where are they? Blue Lines. Of course, the Bjork's debut. Yes, so Dummy has on it the excellent track Roads. Yeah, number of all the tracks are excellent on here. But Roads was also covered by My Dying Bride. And there's an interesting sort of side thing that happened to me. So this album is, to me, very, very trip hoppy. It doesn't actually say it here, but yeah, well, it sounded pretty heavy, but there's some interesting trip hop shenanigans. And somewhere in their back catalogue, there's some compilation things, and I'll have to try and find them because it's a bit tricky. They were called something like Meisterworks, from what I remember. And where are we? Discography. God, this is proving a really interesting rabbit hole. Is there compilation albums? Oh, there we go. Meisterwork 1. Maybe it's 2, the blue one. There you go, yeah. Really good cover of Portishead Roads. And then the other band that integrated trip hop into their sound, I think, and again, I'm not sure if it will come up with this, but if I try and find, is it Marriage of Heaven and Hell? Where's it gone? Yeah. It's got an interesting, to me, trip hop tinge to it. Well, it's interesting when you hear, trip hop combined up with other music. I know there's a pretty cool version of Massive Attack's Safe from Harm, which has like a much more guitar-y version on it as well. And I'm trying to remember how easy it is to get that version, whether it is included on Blue Lines on the CD or not, because there are several different versions of this, I think. Oh yeah, that's right, The Insider. I have the soundtrack for this. This is a really good soundtrack. Insider soundtrack. Go down. Yeah, it's got Lisa Gerrard on it. So the other, yeah. So yeah. That's probably I ended up at the same time. Just trying to think when I started really exploring Dead Can Dance, but it's interesting when you go down these and start exploring soundtrack rabbit holes, and you find, and then through listening to soundtracks, you get into other artists as well. So there's a whole load of Lisa Gerrard and Peter Walk stuff on here, as well as this Perfecto mix by Massive Attack. It's really long, got extra guitar in it, really cool. So yeah, cool soundtrack if you can manage to track the one down for this Insider. Anyway, I think I'll stop there. Yeah, this got rather weird here. It'd be interesting if I put in Massive Attack, what happens? Last FM data can be a little bit weird sometimes. Strange there, but just make sure this is actually working in case I've succeeded in breaking it at some point. Let me think of yeah, no, that works fine. Yeah, something strange there. Yeah, I don't know why that would be the case with Massive Attack. What about Tricky? Maybe it's all just new stuff, yeah. was going to finish up the video here, but I'm now intrigued as to, I didn't bother to check out any of these. It's funny, I don't recognise any of these on this list. See, I think, you know, my go-to one originally was the Spotify algorithm, and the problem I had is there we go, yeah, so they do exist. The problem I had was that you can't do recommended artist lookup anymore through the API. They've deprecated it for some reason. I don't know what they're going to bring instead of it, but yeah, it's not working at the moment, so I've gone back to using Last.fm. Okay, so there we have it. Thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future video.